of this brand new book, the first Michigan Colored Regiment, Maurice Imhoff. Maurice, welcome to the show.
Always happy to be here, Bart.
Yeah, great to have you back, and on another book. Now, you've written or been part of writing teams that have produced quite a few books about Jackson and Michigan history.
Yeah, we've, with the Historical Society, written several publications internally as the Historical Society, and just recently finished up one not too long ago on the Michigan Theater. But before I had worked on any of those, I actually had finished this publication, but this one's published by the History Press, so it had been in the publishing phase in the background the entire time. So,
when I first met you, you were 13 years old, and you were a kid reenactor at the Civil War muster. I never imagined that you would become so passionate about history at that point, but it really has. It's kind of taken over your life, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a passion project, and researching this regiment specifically, it's been unique through the years. And I think just not too long ago, in 2023, we took a trip to Olustee, Florida, and while visiting down in Atlanta along the way, I saw one of my family members and learned more of my own personal history about how some of my family members were enslaved in history. Actually, I always had thought that, figured that, right? But to actually hear it, built a whole new passion into telling this story, not just as a living historian, but also writing a publication knowing that my ancestors were also a part of this history.
Is that a lot of people's assumption that because I'm in the United States and I'm African in descent, I must have been brought here because my ancestors were enslaved?
Yeah, most of the time, yes. Unfortunately, a lot of the history, right, we don't know because of data record lost, et cetera, through the years. But a lot of the times it is the assumption, and this was sometimes it's from oral histories, right? And that was what mine was. I haven't seen documentation, but I've heard it now on multiple occasions from multiple family members that's been passed down from generations, that family history, which has been quite unique and interesting to learn.
And I think a lot of the history that you're uncovering it's been hidden away or buried, or just people didn't know.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big points about what you've been, I think, discovering is that a lot of Black Americans fought for the North in the Civil War.
Absolutely. And what we talk about a lot about in my Living History group is that African Americans have been taught in history for many years as the victims of the Civil War, that whites went and freed all of the slaves, etc. But the real story is that blacks were the victors of the Civil War, right? Over 180,000 black men took up arms, 1,400 from Michigan took up arms to go fight for the freedom of others. And that's what I think makes this unit so unique, is that many of them, over around 1,000 I should say, were former slaves. They spent their life in slavery in the South, came to the North, got their freedom, and instead of just staying here in Michigan, they put their life and their freedom on the line by going back to the South to fight for the freedom of others. And I tell a lot of families and school kids, to make it relatable, is let's picture your family now. Your brothers, your sisters, maybe even your girlfriend, right? Still left in slavery. They were going back to free them so they could have the same freedom now that they're enjoying as an individual.
They knew people they were fighting for.
Absolutely. Which was totally different than the white men who were fighting. A lot of boys, we talk about Jackson, the Civil War, a lot of them were fighting to preserve the Union and go on a journey, to travel the country. It wasn't a big powerful push for freedom, as it was for the black men fighting.
All right, let's look at a couple of the drawings or pictures. I don't know, maybe we even have a photograph, but obviously this is a drawing. Tell us a little bit about this.
So this is from the Library of Congress, and this is talking about the Emancipation Proclamation, and we can see an officer here helping to share the news of the emancipation. If you look on the ground, you see the traitor Confederate flag, on the ground they're standing on top of, saying, we're going to just take down the South and free our brothers because we are all one. And you can see education is a symbol in the background as well, that the men will be educated, they will learn. You can see an individual reading on the left, and on the right we see the soldiers pressing into battle, and another soldier breaking the chains, I should say, of slavery. And I think that shows just how large this movement was in American history. This was not something small. This was a national movement. You're talking thousands and thousands of men and women.
Who's this?
This is Mr. Kitchen Artis. He was from Romeo, Michigan. I believe he's buried in Romeo as well. Very dapper man, as we can see here.
Is this actually a photograph?
This is a photograph. There's only like 3 photographs known of this regiment. This is one of them. And I think this is really unique because if you look at his uniform, it's very nice. He's wearing even shoulder scales. A lot of times in history, especially the Civil War, you're taught that blacks were given scraps. They were given junk. This photograph shows an example that wasn't always the case. Michigan wanted to show off their colored soldiers, and they gave them some of the best uniforms that the state could provide, and this is an example
Really?
of such.
The state they were proud to have
Yes.
what at was the time called colored troops.
Absolutely. I mean, we had Austin Blair here, right? Of course,
Right.
who lived here in Michigan or in Jackson, and he was a very large supporter of this, and he wanted to help raise the regiment. And if you notice, the book is called The 1st Michigan Colored Regiment, but we know them now as the 102nd United States Colored Troops, and that was because they were federalized. They became part of the federal government, but in layman's terms, they were segregated. Is they lost their state designation and became part of the U.S. Colored Troops, the Bureau of the United States Armed Forces, which was almost an insult. They felt we are not the U.S. Colored Troops. We are Michigan men. We're the 1st Michigan Colored Troops, because if you were in a battle and let's say you whipped the Rebs and you made them scatter, they'd go, oh, that's the U.S. Colored Troops. You wouldn't know what state they're from, where they're from, and they really liked that state designation. They went by that a lot of times personally.
So in Jackson, we had a lot of Jackson men that fought in the Civil War. Were there any of Jackson's Civil War soldiers in the
Yes.
colored regiment?
I want to say working with Diane Washington at the Veterans Garden there, we did some research and I pulled those numbers. I want to say, I'm going to give a rough number because I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'm going to say 60 to 70 African American men enlisted here in Jackson from them. I don't know how many lived here, of course, exactly, but they enlisted here in Jackson in the war. And a part of that was that this regiment actually visited Jackson in late 1863 on a recruiting tour. They marched down our streets here, helping to get recruits and show that they existed. And I talk about that in the book because it's so important for a community like this. Why? Because of Under the Oaks. In 1854, this community stood up, took the national stage, and said slavery is wrong. And now, for the first time in this history, they're seeing a full unit of African American men in uniform.
Yes, Jackson was
that-
a well-known community that was very much anti-slavery, and obviously a stop on the Underground Railroad. And I think this book and what you've been able to learn makes the Civil War muster
Sure.
that much more personal to this community.
Absolutely.
And it's coming up.
Yep, just here in a few weeks. We're in the planning stages now, and one of the most exciting things this year is we are celebrating the 250th birthday of the Army this year. That was earlier this year, and now we're continuing to celebrate it this year. So we've partnered with the Army, and we have some vehicles coming out and a nice display, but also tons of reenactors as always.
All right, this book is just coming out next month.
Absolutely.
It's hot off the press. And where can people get it?
They can get it on Amazon or at Arcadia Publishing's website, History Press, or we're hosting a book launch on August 22nd at 7 p.m. at Cascades.
At the muster.
At the muster, yep.
Awesome. We'll come meet Maurice and get the book and be a part of the muster. Well, congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
I know it's a lot of work. I know I've seen some of your presentations of the history that led to this book, so I'll be anxious to read it as well. Thanks, Maurice.
Thank you, Bart.
Maurice Imhoff, author of this brand new book, The 1st Michigan Colored Regiment, about the men who fought slavery in the Civil War.